Good morning. Welcome to a very special event that we have today. We're very fortunate to have as our guest Potpourri speaker, Randy Lewis. Randy is a professor of chemical engineering at BYU, and that particular department has done and continues to do amazing things, not just here, but around the world. And it's because they are constantly doing things to improve the things we do every day. And then they share that information throughout the world. And so I just was looking at what we had up here, the places you have been. Where are you from? Okay. And Randy is married to Cynthia, and Cynthia is a sister of Julie Red. And you've probably seen Cynthia because she often joins us for ElderQuest events.
My wife and Julie are sisters.
Julie
Right.
and Cynthia here are sisters. So anyway, and Julie couldn't be here or she would be doing this introduction, but she is with John Hahn on that amazing Asian trip that they are on for 3 weeks. Anyway, we're just going to turn the time over to you, Randy, to let us know everything that you are about.
Great, thank you.
What you can share in an hour.
Sure. Okay, just another quick brief introduction. So I taught at Oklahoma State University for 11 years before I came here. And my wife and I, we have 9 children. My wife's also a chemical engineer as well. And we have 1 child left at home. So we're not quite empty nesters yet. Our other 8 are out of the home, but we have one, a junior in high school still left. And we are expecting our 11th grandchild. So we're pretty excited. But just to tell you a little bit, I've been at BYU now for 19 years. And I have focused primarily in the biomedical area. That's my research, but I've gotten into a side area, which has actually become a big, huge passion of mine, and started a global engineering outreach program at BYU. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this program. It started in 2007. So just right after I moved here, I started this. And this program is actually we've started in Tonga, then we went to Ghana, and then we've been focusing on these last 3 countries. I'll tell you a little bit about Tonga in just a second, and then Ghana, and spend the rest of the time on the others. But we've had hundreds of students in this program. And right now I have 11 working on 12 and 13 departments at BYU, all involved in this global engineering outreach. So it's really across the BYU campus. We're currently focusing on cook stove sensors in Peru, quinoa processing in Bolivia, and prosthetics in Ecuador. So let me just tell you kind of the vision of this. So right now, this program, it started out as just engineering students only. But now I've got life science students, sociology students, nursing students, food science students, media arts students, business students, and we're adding some art students. We've got a lot of students involved because we need each other to do these projects. We can't just say only engineers or only sociology or only nursing. Yes.
Microphone. Sorry.
Okay, with the announcement of the medical center or whatever that's going to be at BYU, how will that work with all of this?
They're actually already starting to ask us that question. So we are working with nursing and we're doing prosthetics, but we're also working into some medical equipment that we're going to start doing across the world, which is of course the focus of the new medical school. So they're still right now figuring things out with the medical school, but we're included in some of that conversation as they reach out to us, but it's still really early on. the big thing that we're trying to do is break down silos across the campus. We don't want engineers to just take engineering. We don't want sociologists to just take sociology. We want everyone to work together to feed and learn about each other on each other's skills to do things. We also have some great strengths, right? We have a lot of people that speak Spanish. So that's really, really great. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the people, places, and projects that we've worked in. Here's some just pictures of people in Peru. The first project we worked on in 2007, you can see this is primarily just the engineering students. Tonga right here, you can see Australia right there, so it's just out in the Pacific Ocean. We worked on making biodiesel from coconuts, and it was a great experience. And what we did here, by the way, there's a lot of islands there, but we were on primarily the main island there. What we did is we basically, the way you make biodiesel is you husk the coconut, you grind it and get all the white meat out. The white meat's got the oil in it. So then you need to cook the water out of it so it only has oil, because water and oil won't make biodiesel. Actually, it makes soap. So you don't want water in there. So you get the water out, and then we press it, and then we convert it, and here's the product right here. You can see it right there. So that was a really great project. They used the biodiesel there. The disadvantage of working in Tonga was that we had to import everything. So to make the biodiesel, you have to, for instance, use sodium hydroxide. Well, they don't make sodium hydroxide in Tonga, so you have to bring it in there. So we really wanted to work with countries where everything can be done in country. We didn't have to worry about imports and things like that. So, so then we started working in Ghana, and we worked in two areas. So Ghana is basically this right here, this country. We worked in two places right here. We worked in a place called Minya and Tarkwa. And we worked on solar heating, windmills, and biofilter toilets. And we worked with an engineer in Accra. Here's a biofilter toilet. Basically, it looks like about the size of that table initially, what it was. And there were thousands of these implemented by this engineer in Ghana for the people. But what we did is we helped redesign them, and we actually got them smaller. So they were only about this long instead of, we made them about half as long, much more efficient and so forth. So here we have students working on the bacteria analysis. Permeability, that just means how easy water and things flow through the soil. The more permeable, the easier it flows. The less permeable, the less it flows. So we worked on these biofilter toilets in Ghana. Oh, you want to know how it works? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So basically, this is not the finished inside, but let me just tell you how it works. So think about it about the size of a coffin, the same height, width, height, and diameter, basically like that. And then you have this porous block in here. And on top of this porous block, we put a lot of, so this is just showing you kind of the clean version of the toilet. We put a lot of dirt in there and worms. Okay. So then what happens when the solids and the liquids come in, the solids stay on the dirt part and the liquids flow through the dirt and this porous, and then it goes out into an area, because the liquid is pretty much sterile and very clean. And then the worms decay all of the solids and things. And it doesn't smell. You can put your, you can be this far away and you can't smell anything. So it's like, yeah. Oh, so then there's an actual toilet in the house. Yes. There is a toilet with a pipe, and then the pipe comes into here. So this is buried about 10 feet from the house. Okay. So it's like a little septic tank in a sense. So thanks for. Okay, and then we also worked on windmills. So these students, it's dark at night. They have no lights at night, 0 lights at night. They go home and they're just in the dark. So the idea was there was a merry-go-round developed by some mechanical engineers that was used. And so as the kids move the merry-go-round, it generates electricity. And inside this building was a storage bank of batteries that were charged as they were moving their merry-go-round. And then we added a windmill on top of that to add additional charge to that. Here we are testing the windmill on the back of a truck. We were driving it around town so it can spin, so forth. The disadvantage of Ghana now, so Ghana was great because we had an engineer. These were all local things, but every student going had to get every single immunization that exists in the world, essentially. So that was hard to say, let's keep going back to Ghana.
Question,
Yes.
how much electricity did that,
It's enough to charge little lantern flashlights.
for how long?
They can take them home during the night, and it probably lasts, depends how long they turn them on, but it'd be several hours of light that they can use.
Due to the windmill and the
That's
merry-go-round?
correct. So that's why we decided to focus on Peru. One, we didn't have to do all those immunizations. Second, we didn't have to get all of the, we could do things in country, etc. So we started in Peru. We actually are still working a little bit. We're focusing more on Ecuador and Bolivia a little bit, but we work in 3 areas. This one is in northern Peru, a little town called Gran Porcon, which I'll tell you a little story at the end. Villages just outside Cusco. This is where Machu Picchu is. And Lake Titicaca, which is a 100 miles long lake. It's the highest navigable lake in the world. 50 miles of it's in Peru and 50 miles of it's in Bolivia. We've worked on various things over the years: soap making, water heating, water delivery, water storage, pumps. Here is someone seeing our water heating. And what we did on the water heating is, first of all, the water heating is natural. There were no pumps or anything. What it does is you have a storage tank above the fire up on the roof, and you have a copper pipe coming down in through the fire and a copper pipe going back up to the water. And it's natural. So the water coming down is colder. So it's heavier, it's more dense. And the water that's heated in there becomes less dense because it heats up. So the less dense water naturally goes up and the heavier one comes down. So it naturally just keeps doing this and gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And here you can see a guy just enjoying hot water right there. We also worked on the floating islands on that lake that I was just talking to you about. I'm going to tell you a little story about those floating islands and just towards the end. We worked on solar cooking, washing machines, but our biggest projects that are most successful are water pumps and water filters. These people that live on these floating islands get their water from the lake. They also use the lake for their restroom. Okay. And the island is about as high as a little bit higher than that table. So if the floor was the water, the island's about where the table. So they'd have to lean over, get buckets, and get the water for cooking. What we did is we made a $15 PVC pipe with valves in it, and it's about 20 feet long, and we jam it right through the island because the island's just made out of reeds, so you can just put it right through the middle of the island. It goes down the water, and you can just pump your water. It works really great. But then once we pump the water, we put it into these sand filtration systems, and it cleans the water. And these we've had these on, we had this one since 2012, still functioning on the island and the pumps. We also like to do Machu Picchu trips. So here you can see Machu Picchu. This is Huayna Picchu right here on the background. And we always like to climb to the top right here of Huayna Picchu. This is one of our students sitting right up here, looking down on Machu Picchu. And the trail is right here. It's hard to see, but the trail is right there. And it's actually, and you can see part of the trail. We're walking up the trail right there. But Machu Picchu is a really wonderful place. And so our students love seeing Machu Picchu. Let me just tell you a little bit about Emerson. So Dora and Nelson are a husband and wife that live on the islands. They've lived there for a long, long time. This is a picture of Emerson, their oldest son. I want you to just take a minute to read this, but you can see how the pumps and the clean water has impacted Emerson. Now, this is a picture of Emerson when he was 5 years old. This is Emerson just this last year. And he is now a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Viña del Mar, Chile mission. That's him when he started his mission. This is a picture of him recently. So I've seen Emerson grow from 5 years old to now this, because we go down there every year and pretty much see him. So it's just wonderful to see the impact of what these filters and pumps have done. Of the water. Yeah, because they would drink the water right out of the lake. And a lot of times they try to boil it, but sometimes they would just drink it. But they bathe in the lake, they use it for the restroom, they use it for their water. It's their whole livelihood. Okay. Let me spend the last part of the presentation spending the time of what we've been spending a lot of time now working on. That is in Bolivia, Ecuador, and Peru. In Bolivia, we work in an area just outside of La Paz. La Paz is right near that lake. So the floating islands I was just showing to are right there in Peru, on this side of Peru. And we work inside La Paz. If you haven't been to La Paz, think about Mount Timpanogos. You can also see Mount Timpanogos. Go up 2,000 more feet than the top of Mount Timpanogos, and you're in La Paz. Okay, so we're really, really high up and we're living there. It is a little challenging for our students because we're living at 13,000 feet for a period of time. But we work with a group called ProIMPA. There's a research facility just outside La Paz that's run by a BYU alumnus that got his PhD here at BYU. His name's Alejandro. And there's a research station there dealing with quinoa. Here's some pictures of quinoa seeds. Now you can see there's a coating on it. Do you see the coating on it? That coating is bitter tasting. When you buy quinoa at the store, this coating's not on there. And that coating has something called saponins. Saponins are really bitter tasting. They are toxic if you eat a lot of them, but if I ate just a little bit, I wouldn't have a problem. But if you ate every day with all this stuff on, it would be problematic. But the saponins need to come and get washed off. The reason why the scientists think that there's saponins on there, it keeps birds from eating the seeds because they don't like the bitter taste either. But you need to wash these seeds. Well, we developed a quinoa washer. It's actually a very simple system: bucket, motor, impeller, and so forth. The women who do the washing there typically have a big bucket about this big, this high, and they do it by hand. They just dip their hands in and do this, and then dip their hand, and it's freezing cold water, and it takes about 45 minutes to do what this can do in 4 minutes. Okay, and this is, after we spin this for 4 minutes, this is what it looks like. This froth stuff is all that saponin stuff that's come off of it. And then they are so excited about this down there because they can now just go and stick stuff in, and 4 or 5 minutes later, they've got their quinoa washed. Yes.
Here comes the mic.
Oh, sorry.
No, we do not have a patent on it because we want anyone to just build them and use them.
Okay, that was my.
Yeah.
But will it be more specialized in?
Well, what we're doing, so first of all, here's a bunch of them that we finished building. We have 50 of them implemented already. So we're still on the early stages, but we got 50 of them in about 8 different communities. Here's some people. Here's these ladies getting the washers. And let me just tell you this quick story. So because we want to build them down there, so all the parts are done in Bolivia. And so we actually hired some Bolivian students to learn how to build the washers. because we bring new students down every year who don't know how to build the washers. So our Bolivian students teach our students how to build the washers that we developed. And it's a really cool thing to see. But these washers are implemented. We now have grinders. So after you wash them, you can grind the stuff into flour. We're making small grinders, and we're also developing quinoa poppers to make like popped popcorn kind of thing, but it's popped quinoa. Yes.
How many people can one washer support?
Actually, that's a great question. That's why we have the sociologists on our team. So they use these, some of them use them about 3 or 4 hours a day, daily. Some of them use them once a week. So the idea is you can actually share them. We have one in a school. So you can actually share them with people if you'd like. Yes, this is only for quinoa. Here's another picture, and I'm going to show a video. Let's see if the video works.
One of the ways that
Just a second. The sound just. Why did the sound go out? Do you know?
That's something else. That's not the-
Let me try just loading it one more time.
One of the ways that Yape Bolivia works to end poverty is to partner with other
It doesn't like the full screen. I'm just gonna leave it half screen. Does that sound okay? Okay, let me just. Sorry about that.
Change the share.
Right.
The other back.
One of the ways that Yape Bolivia works to end poverty is to partner with other organizations who have great ideas but lack funding. Such is the case with a team of engineering students from Brigham Young University who want
Let's see if we can.
You said share you were sharing the other screen.
Got it. Okay.
So you need to go back and reshare when you change.
Yep. Got it.
wanted to provide quinoa works to end poverty is to partner
Fix it back. Double touch. Now it should have-
There we go. Okay. Now let's see if we can get this.
with other organizations who have great ideas but lack funding. Such is the case with a team of engineering students from Brigham Young University who wanted to provide quinoa growers in the Altiplano with a more cost-effective method for washing their crop. Quinoa is more nourishing than potatoes, and many families rely on it both for healthy nutrition and income. Currently, the quinoa has to be washed by hand, an arduous process that takes several hours, or taken to expensive industrial washers. The students invented a very efficient, cost-effective washer that could be built in Bolivia. In partnership with the Quinoa Institute in Viacha, a Bolivian NGO, 100 families were identified as a test group. The families contributed a nominal amount, and your donations covered the rest of the cost of these life-changing machines. Working with the Institute and local families to understand all of the challenges and needs, the design was perfected, families were trained, and a schedule for checking in and collecting data to measure the impact of the project was set. Everyone wins.
Okay, so there's the. So we teamed up with a place called Yape Bolivia. So I'm going to go back to my share a different. Just share my other screen here. Just a second, I'm gonna get back to where I'm at. Okay, so basically we teamed up with an non-government organization. They call them NGOs, non-government organizations. Teamed up with them and then us, and we implemented them. So that's kind of our story of our quinoa. Right now, again, we're working on even further designing this. We're looking at hand-powered quinoa washers. We're also looking at, like I said, mills and poppers, and also food products and so forth. Let me just tell you a little bit about Ecuador. And that will go away in just a minute. Ecuador. So now we also focus in Ecuador on prosthetics. Here is the town of Quito, right here, Colombia. And we work in a town near the Colombian border called Ibarra. It's about 150,000 people. And there's a prosthetic clinic that was started by a couple that live in North Carolina. And they have trained local people, these are actual Ecuadorians, to be prosthetists. The challenge in Ecuador is that a prosthetic leg, so if the leg gets cut off for some reason, it's usually diabetes or an industrial accident or something like that. They get donations from the United States for the metal leg and the foot part. But there's something called consumables that wear out. So the first one is a liner. So what happens is they put this like sleeve on their leg, and it has a pin, and that pin locks into the metal leg that gets donated to them. But it also has a foot that's this metal inside this here, but then we get a foot shell to make it cover the metal little foot to look like a foot. Okay, so our engineers at BYU are working on the liner and the foot shells because they have to, these are not made in Ecuador, so they have to import them. Importing them are something like the order of $150 to $200. That's a lot of money for the people in Ecuador. We are now, and these foot shells the same, they're very expensive. We can make these foot shells for about $17, and we can make these liners for about $25. Okay, and so we actually have some on patients, but let me just show you, this is our team here. These are some foot shells that we made. They actually look pretty good, don't they? They look like feet. And you can see us, this is upstairs in the clinic where we're showing them how to make them. Now, a really exciting thing, we're actually working on 3D printed feet right now. I should have brought one. I didn't think about bringing one. I was actually holding one with the students yesterday because it's we're 3D printing them because those metal legs with the feet, those feet part, there's like 50 or 60 different manufacturers of the feet part, and they're all different. And so what we're doing is we're doing computer design of a foot shell that can go on on different types of feet. And so we can just go get them printed. And we've actually connected with a young man in Ibarra who has a nice 3D printing shop, and he's actually helping us 3D print ones there. So the idea is we can design them here, we can send them down to our 3D printer guy, he can print them, he can bring them over to the clinic. We've only done that part one time. We've got them on patients right now, but we're just setting up this design here, print them there, put them on patients there. Yeah, so you'd have a different engineering design to fit the inserts, though. Exactly. So a patient can have, and he says, I need size 26, this insert, we can go get it 3D printed. Yes. Yes, so he charges us $21 to 3D print. So, and that makes profit for him. So pretty inexpensive. A cool thing is we brought some 3D printed ones down with us, but one of the patients wanted, so these are silicone, and then we're making them 3D printed. So we actually have two different kinds of foot shells. One of the patients wanted a silicone one, and our team that was just down there 2 or 3 weeks ago said, oh, well, let's go upstairs and we'll make one. So they went up and made one and brought it down and put it on them. So it was really, really fun. Here's Hyro, one of the prosthetists, working with our students making a liner. Here he is fitting one of the students. One of the patients, and here is one of the patients with the foot shell and the liner. So we are also working on wheelchairs, cushions, sensor mats. I'm not going to talk about those. Those are some other things. And we're actually working with the nursing college at BYU to develop some medical equipment, low-cost medical equipment for people in Ecuador. I'm just focusing on the liners and the foot shells for today. You can see here again a liner, making a liner. This lady, she actually came in just a couple of weeks ago. She's had her foot on her. This is the one we made for her. She's had that on since almost 2 years now, and it looks great. So it's wearing. So this is our disability prosthetic project. Yes.
Doesn't matter.
So let me ask you, after you've made the foot prosthetic,
Mm-hmm.
do they take that off to shower and?
Yeah, they take their leg off
Okay.
and the liner off.
Do they do it every
Mhm,
day and
mhm.
stuff? when
They do.
Sterilize it?
Yeah,
Okay.
they don't take the foot shell off because it comes off with the whole leg.
Okay,
So the foot shell usually always just stays on the leg, but
so that's
they'll take the
a
liner.
recommended procedure
Yes, they'll
every
take
day.
the liner off and the whole prosthetic off.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, a lot of times they take them off to
So, so one other question, the foot, which looks really real, does it fit a shoe?
Yes, yes. So we'll make these foot shells size 24, 26, 28 to fit
Okay.
their shoe.
One more.
Yes.
What is the major advantage of this silicone foot compared to what they were used
The
before?
problem is the ones they're using are imported. So they're $100, $200, or if
Are they
get-
also silicone, the ones that
Yes.
they import?
Uh-huh. And they, not only are they get them, but they're usually used, like they're donated. They're like cracked and things like that. So the story I just told you where we went upstairs and made a new one, they came in with a really it was all falling off the bottom of their thing. And so we just made a new one. Okay. Let me show you.
We're in Ecuador. We're working on a BYU Global Engineering Outreach project. In Ecuador, they have prosthetic clinics, but it's really expensive. We wanted to create a process where they could make their own prosthetics.
We brought a process. We brought a design. It was incredibly motivating for our entire team to know that this would ultimately go to people not able to financially provide for a prosthetic.
One of the patients said, having this foot shell makes me feel like I have my own foot again. You can't get any better response than that.
Yo estoy muy contento porque gracias a los estudiantes de la Universidad BYU, las personas de mi país van a poder tener una ayuda de una prótesis a un precio muy económico.
BYU has changed my life by giving me an education that brings me closer to God. The things that we're learning can so directly help others and improve the world.
Okay, so that's the video I wanted to show you. So let me get back to the top will disappear in just a minute. Okay, so any other questions on the foot shells and so forth? We're actually looking at making an otoscope. That's the thing that they look in the ear. We're looking at making a very low-cost otoscope. We just visiting with the nursing faculty yesterday. They're the ones that the professionals use are very expensive because they have video and all sorts of things. we're going to start working on making a very low cost one of those with video and so forth for people down in those
Randy,
areas.
I have a question from an earlier screen.
Okay.
When you were on the island and providing a pump after giving them get the water out of the lake, you went through a sand filtering system on that. How often how much of a volume can a bucket of sand handle before it needs to be replaced?
Yeah, so they would have to kind of clean the system about every 3 months. Okay. But they were using enough water. Probably it was bringing every day. They were using maybe about a garbage can to a garbage can and a half. So, but garbage cans are about the garbage cans they were filling were about this tall, and yeah, and they were using about 1.5 times that per day. I don't know if that gives kind of an idea. Okay, any other questions on those? And then I'm going to tell you two very exciting stories. Okay. This one is a community we worked with in northern Peru, in Porcón, and then I'm going to tell you about the Uros Islands on these floating islands, and I'm going to tell you two stories. So Porcón is just outside of Cajamarca in northern Peru. This is Don Alejandro. You love his hat? They all love wearing hats like that, okay? Don Alejandro is the leader of this community. And about in the 1970s, the government gave them money gave 4 communities money to kind of help their communities get out of poverty. They were living in things that looked like igloos, but made out of mud instead of snow. That's what their homes were, okay? Well, the government gave the money to these 4 communities. 3 of them just spent the money, and they are about the same as they've always been. Don Alejandro, though, was visionary. He was like, let's do something with our money that will get us out of poverty. And so they thought and thought and thought, and then he goes, he talked to people, and they said, how about if we grow pine trees? And they're like, grow pine trees? Like, those take like 10 years to grow, and like, what are we gonna do, eat pine trees? Like, let's use the money now. Well, they were able to work with the community to say yes, so let's plant pine trees, because it's very barren, because they're up in the about above the tree line area. Well, they're about, Porcón is about 9,000 feet, just kind of right about the area of where tree lines are. They got in contact with a guy from Germany who was a pine tree specialist, who came and said, let's try growing a couple of them, see if they work. Well, they did. Well, look behind Don Alejandro there. What do you see? Okay. First of all, this is just a quote that I like, but let me just show you. These are seedlings. So they actually start with seedlings in their community. And it's blocking up there, but it says 12 million. I don't know why I've got that blocking up there. I think that'll go away in a minute. That's my top of my screen share. 12 million pine trees they have planted by hand, one by one. Okay. Okay. So first of all, look at, like, they're in rows. Have you ever seen a forest that like looks like rows? Okay. 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 They're in rows. Now,
Norway does that.
do they? They look cool. Well, and they're not all perfectly rows, because up in the mountains, they couldn't quite do rows. But they plant about 1 to 2 million still every year, and harvest about 1 to 2 million a year. And they actually have a group that goes out every morning and cuts off the bottom 10 feet. So all of these trees, that's a lot of trees to go out and trim, but they trim all the bottom 10 feet because it makes them grow stronger. Well, they use the wood, they sell the wood, so it's lumber for the people in Peru. And they use the money from the lumber. And my screen has just frozen up. Now,
Touch the screen and come back.
oh, by the way, there's 8 miles. Okay, this is a Google map of this area. Look how barren it is, but look at all this green. There's 8 miles of forest that they have planted. Okay. Well, what did they do with their money? Well, they've made a fish farm. They raise trout and sell trout. They've have a big cattle milking industry now. They sell all their milk to Hershey. Okay, not only that, but every one of these cows has a name. And when they milk the cows, they put them all in this big pen, and then they'll just say, hey, Sarah, 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 and Sarah, the cow, will walk up into the stall. No, they have them, they hooked up the machines, but they call them by name and they just walk in. It's really fun. And they train them because we went over and they start naming them about when they're about 3 or 4 days old. And they just talk to them over and over and over with their name. They've also got a wood mill, a sawmill. They make furniture, sell furniture. They have a water bottling plant. They have a yogurt facility. They make bread. They make cheese. And they sell it. Look what they did with their money just by starting with trees. They have signs of gratitude everywhere. These are biblical scriptures in Spanish all over their buildings and on their shirts. And they're always just thanking God for this great blessing that they have. The reason why I bring this up is think about the faith that it took. When you say, when you're hoping for something, like you're really hoping for something and you're putting a lot of faith in, like, I hope it happens in 2 weeks from now or a month from now. They're like, we're going to have to wait 10 years before we can even start doing anything. That's a lot. That takes a lot of faith to do something like that. But look at what's come from that.
Question.
Yeah.
So now what do they live in? What are their homes like now?
That's a great thing, because it's very interesting when you go to this community. It is like a first world, third world community. They still have outhouses. They still have single lights in their rooms. They still have cooked by fire. But then they've got, you saw the water bottling plant. It looks just like a US. I mean, it is state of the art stuff. So it's a very interesting community where they've got state-of-the-art stuff, but they still live and cook by fires and things like that. And in fact, our kids were down there and stuff. They still chop the chicken's head off in the kitchen, and the chicken things are hanging there. That was really, yeah, you hand wash your clothes. Our children were like, wow, this is interesting. And it was good for them to go down there. Let me just talk about the Uros Islands. So these are the Uros people. This is land back here. So there's actually just to the right of here, there's a city of 100,000. They are about 5 miles off of the coast of where the city is. They used to be more like 60 miles off, but their island started in a storm, started floating away. So they wanted to be closer to land. These are floating islands. They are about 6 to 8 feet thick. The way these islands are done is right behind these islands. These are reeds back here growing in the water. So this island, so this is 50 feet of water. This is marshy, swampy reed area. Well, these reeds disconnect from the bottom of the lake about twice a year. So then what they do is when they disconnect, they go with these big saws, kind of like those ones that loggers use, one of those hand saws, and they saw out a size of piece of island that they want. Or if they want to put 2 of them together, they saw out 2 and they pull them by boat to where they're at. They hook them together. They put big boulders to throw them over the edge to hold them in place. And then they cut reeds and they lay about 2 to 3 feet of reeds on this floating part to make a big bed of reeds. And then they make houses. These houses are a mix of wood and reeds. Well, and by the way, here's a picture of Emerson, the one I showed you a little while ago.
Oh, where there's so much land out there, why do they want to
Okay.
have these floating islands?
Excellent question. Okay. First of all, the Uros people are from a long history of time, and it was more for protection from warfare. The Incans and all those other people, if they're living out in the water versus on land, they can protect themselves more. And now it's cultural. They want to live out there to preserve their heritage. The difficulty thing is these reeds have to be added to the island about every 2 weeks because they decay. Well, it takes them 4 days, 8-hour days to cut enough reeds to lay on the island for every 2 weeks. So 4 days out of the 2 weeks, they are out there cutting reeds so they can lay them. Let's talk about a chore. That would be a big chore, wouldn't it? These houses, under the houses, see there's a thicker thing of reeds under these houses. So they just lay them, they don't put them under the houses, but about once or twice a year, they have to move their house to put another thing of reeds.
What's the population? How many people live like that?
Okay, so when we started working there, there were about 50 islands.
Wow.
Now there's like 150 islands.
More?
And the reason why there's not more people. In fact, there's less people because it's a lot of work. So people are like, it gets hard. So it's like, let's go live on the land. I don't have to go cut reeds.
But after they get an education, do they continue to want to live like that?
Some do. So this has fluctuated a lot. It started out with about 800 people. When we started going there, it went down to about 100 people right before COVID. And then when COVID hit, a lot of people moved back on the islands.
Wow.
And I don't know what the current count is right now. But the challenge of living on these islands, as you can see, is the upkeep. The difficulty of they have more islands. The reason why they have more islands is because they have it's tourism that's their big thing. And what happened is they have leaders on each island has a leader, and then there's a leader over all of the leaders. They came to a conclusion like, we'll take this half of the islands that get tourists for like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This half gets them Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And it bases on the number of islands you have. Well, everyone had one island. So someone came up with the idea like, well, if I build 2 islands and everyone else has 1 island, then I will get twice as many tourists. Well, then everyone else built 2 islands. And so now you've got that much more islands to take care of. So it really has been a challenge. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Now this picture was taken a while ago. We were just there we were just there in May, this last May on there. And Dora and Emerson, Dora and Nelson still live there. Okay, well, guess what? We went out fishing with them in the boat. They go lay nets in the morning so they can go this is like 5 in the morning, and then they pull them in about 8 in the morning. The problem is the fish are not as prevalent as they were before, but that's they go duck hunting. The ducks, Emerson uses a slingshot. He's really good at it, and he gets ducks so they can have ducks. And then they use money from tourism to go to town to buy some supplies. Okay. Yes.
So they make their own island.
They make their own islands, and if you aren't happy with someone, you can actually saw your island and separate. So, yeah. Yes.
I just have another question. What is their education?
So most of them get the elementary. So they, like Emerson wrote, he would take his boat. They learn how to use boats when they're about 5 years old, motor boats. So they can drive their own motorboat like 5 or 6 years old. And they'll take them to town, like to town, and they'll go to school. They do have an elementary school on the islands. But then once elementary school is done, they go to high school or they go to church and all those things on the main.
Another question,
Yes.
how do they get rid of human waste on that island?
They go over behind the bushes.
Oh, no. Or into Lake Titicaca?
Exactly.
And where do they get their water?
From Lake Titicaca.
Oh, no.
Yep. Okay, so they use the Tortora reed for lots of things. They used to do fires on their islands, but you can imagine cooking fires on an island full of reeds sometimes doesn't work. So they've had a couple of fires. So most of the things now are propane. They have to go into town and buy propane. So they still have a fire, but it's controlled because it's on a gas burner rather than on the ground. I will tell you, they are very hardworking people, super hardworking people. Yes. Yeah, so interestingly, back in about, I can't remember the exact year, but they put a church on the islands. Elder Rasbin, who wasn't a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, actually dedicated the church. And Nelson was the first branch president. There were about 100 on the islands that were church members. And so they had church there for a while. And that lasted for about 5 or 6 years. And then what happened is people started moving onto land. So the church, they've ended up, the church isn't there anymore. And so they have to go on land. But there were missionaries. When we were first working there, there was missionaries assigned specifically just to the islands. So the missionaries had their own boat and they would just boat around to the different islands. They are now they just have some that go out there occasionally. Okay. The reason why I bring this story, oh, here's a little bit about some pictures. Here they are bringing reeds back for their islands. Okay, they like to make structures too with the reeds. So really cool structure. And here you can see lots of different floating islands and the houses on them. It's a hard life, but you know what? They're dedicated. And that's the thing I want to just finish up is just, if you look at Grand Porcon, look at the faith, their gratitude, their hard work. And it took a lot of time to see those trees grow. Look at the people on the Aros Islands. They had to remember all the small little tasks in life, right? So that's the message I bring to you is we got to always keep doing our little small tasks because if they quit putting reeds on their islands, of course, that was actually a big task, but the idea is if you quit doing things like that, then it just all decays and goes away. They were also very consistent and they had to watch the spoil, the bad stuff. And so the idea is look at these people down there. And we've learned a lot of things from them. And that's the thing that our students are very grateful for. It's not us going down to be the saviors for them. It's actually we're in teams. And so the way that we do things is we work closely with the communities on all of these projects. Our students call down there on almost a week or every other week basis with these communities and work with them on the projects. Half of our class are fluent Spanish speakers because of their missions. And so we are always in contact with them. We now actually go down on a regular basis. We go down we send a small group down every January. So I just got back from Bolivia about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we send one to Ecuador and we send one to Bolivia/Peru. And then we bring a big group in May. We have 60 students going down this May on our study abroad. We're mixing with nursing, engineering, sociology, etc. And then we bring a small subgroup again in August. And I do the opposite. So I did Bolivia 2 weeks ago. I will do Ecuador in August and vice versa. So we're going down 3 times a year to follow up on the projects, to implement them, to work with the people and so forth. Here's the website if you ever want to see any more, geo.byu.edu. We've got an actual club also that works on the Navajo Nation. We go down, in fact, we'll be going down in about a month from now. We do projects down on in the Four Corners area. Those are for students typically more like freshmen, sophomore students that will do. the juniors and seniors tend to go on these bigger trips and work on projects. So that's all I have for you today.
Gerhard, it's Claire. I have a question.
You got a question online?
I have a question. Who finances the students? Do they pay their way? And where do
Excellent.
they stay when they get down there?
Excellent question. So first of all, our big studies abroad. So the trip, like in May, costs about $4,500 per student. Okay. The students tend to pay about 3,000 of it. 1,500 of it comes from college and donor subsidies. Our January and May trips cost about 2,500 because we're not there for as long, and we're not doing like the Machu Picchu thing every January and August. Those cost about 2,500 a student. We charge the students 500. We subsidize them $2,000 for their trip. Where does all these subsidies come from? We have been very, very grateful to get 2 very large donations to establish an endowment at BYU that helps cover these costs. And in fact, this endowment is what's enabled us to bring on nursing and sociology and so forth. So for instance, in January, we had 7 faculty and 10 students go down. That's a lot of cost and a lot of time, right? But the endowment helped cover some things. BYU has helped fund some things. And so we've just been very, very grateful to the people that have helped establish that endowment. And that's going to let this to keep going for just infinite time.
I'm sure that when the students get back, their lives are changed when they see how blessed and the conveniences they have, and you take a look at what some people have to live in.
And we have the students write at the end of these experiences, and actually during the process, something called inspired learning that we do at BYU. We actually have them report on what inspiration, what learning have they done as they've gone through this process. And after the trip, we have them write, what's this impact been on your education? And the great thing is these students that work on these projects, when they get interviewed for jobs, as soon as they bring that up in the interview, that's pretty much the rest of the interview is just talking about this thing. And it's been helping them get jobs. It's been really good, but they are definitely impacted in a great way.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Turn your mic back on. Your mic's off.
This has been enlightening, inspirational, and educational. And we are really grateful. I've heard about this a bit, but boy, you have expanded my knowledge of what you folks are doing in various places throughout the world, and the help you are giving the people in these places to live better lives. And I also love the idea that it's not just what you're giving, it's what they're getting, because these sorts of projects and things always go both ways. Thank you so much for being here with us.
You're
We
welcome.
appreciate your effort.